The survival horror genre continues to be one of the most loved in the medium of games, and over the years we have had plenty of great experiences of this ilk that have stayed with us after all this time. To that end, we present 15 of the best survival horror games of all time. Days Gone. Days Gone might be a controversial choice for one of the best survival horror games, and there are some pretty good reasons for that notion as well. Sony Ben's open world doesn't have the best pacing, it was rife with bugs, the story isn't the most riveting, etc, but there's also no denying that it has plenty of great merits that deserve to be appreciated on its terms. The freaker hordes provide interesting challenges to overcome, the bike mechanics are surprisingly fleshed out, it's not the most effortless game to enjoy right away, but once you do get the hang of it, it's pretty hard to put down. Outlast Trials. Outlast Trials might be the most recent released on the list, but that doesn't make it any lesser than any other contemporaries. The genius of Outlast Trials lies in the way it blends the traditional tension of survival horror with the chaos that comes from cooperative play, and it does so without overpowering any one element over the other. The slew of clever design tricks, interesting map design, and replayability options makes it an experience that you can sink hours upon hours into. Dead Rising. Capcom's Dead Rising thrusts players into a mall brimming with zombies, and tasks them to survive for 72 hours before help eventually arrives. Unlike most games on the list, Dead Rising's element of survival horror doesn't stem from an overtly bleak atmosphere or even creepy music, but instead from the mechanical tension that comes from holding your ground against the never-ending barrage of zombies. Once you do get past the initial barrier, Dead Rising's brand of gameplay can be innately satisfying as you mow down wave upon wave of enemy zombies with a slew of different weapons. Sons of the Forest. Sons of the Forest takes what worked in the original and amps everything up to 11. In addition to souped up visuals, Sons of the Forest makes some substantial improvements to the mechanics and design, which ensures that each step you take through its horror-infested lush forest is accompanied by a palpable sense of tension. The scarcity of resources also adds a sense of mechanical horror into the mix, making Sons of the Forest a game that fans shouldn't miss out on. Metro Exodus. Metro Exodus takes the learnings of past entries and morphs them into the framework of an open-world game, and the end result is nothing short of extraordinary. Metro Exodus flaunts some really impressive visuals, and the combination of brutal survival mechanics and open-ended gameplay makes for a really enjoyable ride through and through. Amnesia: The Bunker. Amnesia: The Bunker takes place in a desolate World War I setting, and sees you holding your own ground against a ferocious monster hell-bent on shredding you to pieces. The game's horror sensibilities are pretty varied, and you will be equally scared of what you see and what you don't see. The drab visual palette, scant resource availability, and the non-linear open-world structure are some of its biggest defining features, making Amnesia: The Bunker an unskippable game for horror fans. System Shock Remake. System Shock is widely regarded as one of the earliest immersive sims, and the Night Dive developed remake of this classic is a strong reminder of its timeless charm. System Shock excellently balances elements of action with a pinch of horror as you slowly tiptoe through the facility, overcoming the trials and tribulations laid out by Shodan. The open-ended gameplay and emergent systems are also a great reason to keep playing, and that makes System Shock Remake a rather interesting take on survival horror. The Quarry. Yet another game from the horror geniuses over at Supermassive, The Quarry is all about a group of friends trying to survive a night at Hackett's Quarry summer camp. It starts out pretty normal, but things slowly start to go south as paranormal activities come into play. Much like the developer's other games, The Quarry excels in creating multiple narrative threads that are enjoyable to explore, and coming back to see how it all unfolds from a different perspective keeps things interesting. Until Dawn. Supermassive Games' Until Dawn is emblematic of the developer's biggest strengths, right from crafting a flexible narrative that twists and turns based on the choices that you make throughout its run, to the remarkable visuals and, well, everything in between. Until Dawn features some great performances and horrifying set pieces, and the fact that the game keeps on going despite failing certain choices and set piece moments makes it a pretty refreshing experience. Alan Wake 2. The original Alan Wake was an action-adventure game with shades of horror tucked in between, and the sequel, Alan Wake 2, takes those elements and runs with them, turning the game into a full-blown survival horror experience. Between a story that never fails to keep you guessing and a gameplay loop that excellently balances action and horror, Alan Wake 2 is a game that will stay with you long after you roll its credits. After all, it's not a lake, it's an ocean. Alien Isolation. Creative Assembly's Alien Isolation is not only just a good survival horror game, but it's also one of the most innovative games that broke new ground. Of course, we are talking about the Xenomorph's AI that learns from past encounters and uses those experiences to track the player down in a more vicious fashion. Having that element of dynamic behavior from an enemy that can't be taken down easily keeps the level of tension high throughout, making for a constantly horrifying experience through and through. The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us Part 2 might just be Naughty Dog's magnum opus, which is saying something considering that this is the studio behind smash hits like Uncharted and Jak and Daxter. The Last of Us Part 2 veers into much darker territory, with its themes of revenge and brutality, and Ellie is pushed to the breaking point of both her mental and emotional resilience. The combat encounters are also much bigger in scope, often encompassing multiple levels of elevation and sprawling arenas filled with hiding spots and vantage points, allowing you to better express yourself through clever strategy. Silent Hill 2. Konami's Silent Hill 2 continues to be a benchmark for survival horror games, even after all these years later, and that legendary status can largely be attributed to the excellent atmosphere that never fails to keep you guessing. The fog-infested town of Silent Hill is brimming with horrors that would give you nightmares for weeks to come, and everything from the story to the music and puzzle design works in symphony to support the central themes of uneasiness and inducing a sense of fear of the unknown. Resident Evil 2 Remake. Resident Evil 2 is one of the most important horror games of all time, and the developers had to fill some pretty big shoes with its 2019 remake of this classic. And suffice it to say, Resident Evil 2 Remake feels like a trip to the glorious past, complete with rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia. It hits the same notes as the original, but the updated visuals and a new perspective make this experience a lot more palatable for the modern audience. Add to that the replayability options and extra game modes, and RE2 becomes a surprisingly engaging game that should serve you well for more than a couple dozen hours. Dead Space. EA Motive's reimagining of Dead Space made huge waves when it was released last year, and that alone speaks volumes about the sheer quality of its timeless design. Set against the horrid backdrop of the USG Ishimura, Dead Space's tale is a consistently thrilling adventure that tasks you to carefully dismember waves upon waves of increasingly tough necromorphs, and that strenuous gameplay loop coupled with the stunning art direction is more than enough to send chills down one's spine. And that brings us to the end of this video. A quick request before we conclude. We upload new videos every single day, and if you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing. It really helps us out. Also, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon so that you can receive daily video updates. Thanks for watching.